Thank you, everyone. My name is Sean Lofton. I'm a second year MFA candidate in ceramics here at Mizzou, and I'd like to start the presentation today by reading a portion of my work statement for this semester. I have always had a deep interest in architecture, and it has often been a driving force in my artwork. But recently, I have shifted my focus from the building to the decoration. What happens to architectural embellishment when it is removed from its host building? Does the object lose its meaning or take on new importance? These are just some of the questions that my work seeks to answer. These sculptures rearticulate disused architecture in order to show the way in which style, often separated by rigid parameters, can be reimagined as fluid, modular, and valuable. With this series of sculptures, I seek to better understand what a decontextualized and deconstructed ornament can come to represent through digital synthesis and mechanized reiteration. At its core, this work will demonstrate how the functional can be derived from the ornamental, and how the application of technology can question the role of master craftsperson or designer. I will continue to refine a methodology of architectural synthesis, analysis, and articulation that I can use across all styles and histories of architecture that draw my interest. My hope is that as I investigate more of these now defunct styles with this program, I am able to uncover new meaning from old designs. To do this, I have focused my attention on the Innes House, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, which you can see in this first slide. It was designed in 1923 for Charles and Mabel Innes and built in 1924. It's the largest of the four existing Mayan Revival textile block homes that he built and often considered to be his favorite. So why did I choose this one tile from all the potential tiles that I could have chosen? The short answer is Blade Runner, the 1982 film directed by Ridley Scott. When I was watching this again during quarantine, because science fiction is one of my favorite genres, I noticed this tile in the background in these screenshots you see here. And I started to get kind of fixated on it. And I started investigating. I found that these were actually tiles from the Frank Lloyd Wright Innes house that actually existed. I thought it was a set, but it turned out it was a very real thing. And I've always been attracted to that faux future aesthetic, that lost future, the speculative futures of the past. I've always been really attracted to that. And it got me really thinking and looking. And at the time, I was trying to teach myself CAD, and these are parametrically designed designs. So it made it easier to start articulating these things through technology. So there were all these levels that made it really interesting to me. But most importantly was this fact that as I investigated further, I came to realize that there was a large amount of unrealized potential in these tiles. Uh, the way they're laid out in the actual building is through a key system you can see in this bottom photo, where they never make a full cycle. They're made up so that they could actually rotate to complete a larger square. They almost work like fractals in a way, expanding more and more, always propagating and creating itself over again. But for some reason in this house, that was never done. And I found that really problematic, and it was something that I needed to investigate. And that's what really drove me to start this. Now, to do that, I had to really alter my process as well. My old process was driven by wheel throwing. I would wheel throw components, and then I would take them off the wheel, alter them, and then hand build with them. Fortunately, that didn't really work for this kind of making. What I had to do was throw that all out and switch over to CAD, which is computer aided design, where I would sketch inside the program what the tile was, generate that into a 3D model, and then to introduce a layer of modularity that would allow me to build and explore these forms, I would then subdivide that into 16 even squares that are 6 by 6 inches. From there, I would use a 3D printer and I would print out the tiles or the modules of the tile in this black PLA plastic. And then from there, I would use A1 pottery plaster to create traditional ceramic press molds that you can see in this lowest slide here. And that created an interesting through line. This is actually, this type of mold making is really similar to how makers would have produced architectural embellishments out of terracotta during the Art Deco period for buildings. And I found that to be an interesting transmutation from the original material of concrete to clay. I thought that was a really interesting material through line through this history. So this leads me to the first piece. This is the realized cycle, a single cycle realized of the Innes tile. And this was a very cathartic moment to see this thing the way I thought it should be. But it does more than just that. One of the most important things that this piece does is it acts as an index or a codex for the future pieces that it surrounds. This is an organized, almost exploded diagram that helps the viewer assign meaning to other pieces that are more uh, they're going to be more improvised. They're going to be less organized. They're going to be built and broken down. So what this does is it gives a point of visual rest, a point of information for the viewer to decode other pieces. But also, it's a piece that wants to be propagated. It's something that's really interesting, no matter how many times I made these. So these are 64 individual tiles, but it's something that needs to keep growing, and that's what I'm so excited about with it. Is it's never really finished, and it grows to the size of the environment that it's in. And I found that really interesting because it transforms the space. And that's something I noticed is there is this interesting inversion of space that happens. You're taking an object that's meant to embellish the exterior of a building and you're bringing it to the interior. And I've really been liking that inversion of space. I thought that is a really interesting thing to continue exploring. And lastly, it also made me realize that with technology as an intermediary, we're able to question the centrality or the importance of the design, the master designer or the master craftsperson. And I say that because using technology, I was able to recreate a pretty complex design from a very, very well-known, talented architect in a very short amount of time with a very mild learning curve, essentially. And I find that really interesting that as time has gone on, we can now use technology to help us overcome these physical obstacles or just any obstacle to the building process. And I found that really intriguing, and that question began to arise further. This is just a detail shot. This is one of the major changes I actually used the CAD to do. I just increased the relief on these things. I wanted this to push more into the viewer space. I've essentially doubled the layer of relief. So this is about twice as far off the wall as the actual piece would be. And this leads to these composite bricks, as I've started to call them. This is the earliest work to spring from the wall piece. At their core, they're really meant to derive the functional from the ornamental. It's something that I began to realize as I was researching tiles for an art history class or tile making procedures in the medieval age. Medieval tile makers would do this really interesting thing where they would keep unused tiles from one project, bring them to the next, and use those to build their next tile kiln. And I thought this was so fascinating to see them using something that's purely ornamental to create structure. And that was something that I wanted to push in my own work, finding a way to use these ornamental wall tiles, wall blocks to make small structures. And I found that really, really interesting. Additionally, those small structures did something interesting for me. I was really intrigued by this idea of taking and making a small structure within a structure. I found something really compelling about putting buildings within buildings, sort of a small meta building. And I've just been interested in exploring that further as well. And the last thing I realized from these pieces is that they also start to question these really hard and fast boundaries between architectural styles or taste. It's interesting because these are derived from an Art Deco, late modern type of architecture, excuse me, architecture. And as they've been broken down and the modularity has been applied and then they've been reconfigured and reiterated multiple times, I've noticed that they've started to take on this aesthetic of the international style, the style that ended the Art Deco period, modernism, and some would argue Frank Lloyd Wright's career. So it was just interesting to see with this change, this shift, how one style can easily push into another, and they can ebb and flow back and forth, questioning the solidity, and the concrete nature of those boundaries. And that led to this composite brick number 4. This piece is a little more developed in terms of what I'm looking for from these things. This is the direction I'd like to go. What these are trying to do is work off of a quote from Frank Lloyd Wright. He talks about elevating an architectural gutter material of cement in the building of the Innes house. And I thought that was a really intriguing idea. So that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to take the debris from my construction, this concrete, the gutter material, and I'm trying to aggrandize that. I'm trying to use my art object to prop up this piece of gutturality in a sense. I'm applying tension and balance to the thing to make it a precarious relationship, but a relationship nonetheless. And I'm also just exploring those material hierarchies that exist in architecture and ceramics. And what I mean is obviously I'm aggrandizing this piece of cement, and I'm also working within a ceramic hierarchy as well. I'm working with a earthenware brick clay, which in most minds would be considered the low end of the ceramic spectrum. It's the easiest, least expensive, and most versatile, and also the least sanitary, least functional of the clays. So I think in that sense, I'm really drawn to exploring this gutturality, or these at the time, these disused, disliked materials. So that brings me to a piece that stuck with me most of my semester in the background. It was the development of the fountain. This began through stages. The first stage being very provisional, a just an object that I was hoping would work, and it increased in its degree of polish and finish. And there was a massive tonal shift in this thing. And here's a video documenting that I'll play for you while I continue talking. Um, what this thing was meant to do was begin by imitating the materials of the Innis house. So we have concrete, steel, threaded rod, and then the tile block. And I wanted to try to begin activating concept through action. I'm trying to activate this concept and capture a moment in time, in the passage of time, through the disintegration of this unfired clay block. And in doing that, I'm asking these questions about the dissolution of context over time, styles passing out of favor and being forgotten and losing their meaning altogether. But also, I'm trying to capture a very real phenomenon that happens at the Innis house, through a poor design decision on Frank Lloyd Wright's part in the use of local marble from around the site, as a mixture into the concrete. The house is actually disintegrating and deteriorating at a much more rapid rate than you would expect from cement. And it's partially due because of the high acidic pH of the rain in Los Angeles, but because of a bad design decision. And the lower levels of the house are actually buckling and breaking away. So the tile blocks are falling away from the bottom of the house, disintegrating, falling apart, pushing away. And I found that interesting, and I was trying to capture that here. And also, in that same vein, this piece is designed to have a natural ending, a natural failure point. As you can see, it's falling apart. The organized slip is dissolving, and it's turning back into a really viscous liquid that enters the basin. And at a certain point, that water gets so thick, the pumps can no longer push that through the system, and the whole thing comes to a halt. And that's when the piece has to end, and we're just left with a decontextualized artifact of the moment. And that's what I was really interested in capturing as well. So I will let this video run and finish for you. These are just some quick detail shots, but this brings me to my next piece. I don't have a great name yet. I've just been referring to it as street brick or street bricks, but what it is this monolithic cast block of asphalt, and it's meant to be a mirror to the fountain piece that you just watched. And here I'm trying to reverse the failure. There's the failure of the external material now, the contemporary material, the asphalt in this case. And what's happening is that as this piece is put up on the wall, the pressure and the gravity acting on it cause the outer skin to break and peel and fall away. And that's what you see here. And you see these layers of revealing the historical information belief. It's the stratification of history. And we see these blocks coming to the surface, this new these new pieces of information emerging from beneath the asphalt, and I'm looking to try to recontextualize these things, add new meaning to them, have them emerge from below this uniform surface of asphalt, as we can and we can see them again and see the history reemerge. And that's what I was trying to look at. This is to see the brick or the block be the permanent material now, and that's how it's the mirror to the fountain. I wanted to see that history, instead of dissolving with time, being renewed and coming back to the surface. And that's a detail shot there of the asphalt actually falling away. I just found that to be a really interesting thing to see, as it does look like the spolia heaps of demolished buildings, and that's often the thing that we pluck and pull a lot of these artifacts from. And that leads me to my last piece. This is Designio, and this is based on a 15th century Italian design concept that I discovered while reading some of the writings from Josiah McElhaney, particularly his interactions with the abstract body. And what this piece is essentially about is trying to find a way to unify these theories of the designer and the craftsperson. And often in this concept of disegno, there would be a series of sketches from a master designer given to the craftsperson, and there would be this back and forth until they reached a final balanced object. And I was just trying to create a literal and figurative balance here and represent that sculpturally. And that's what this piece is about. Um, you could see on one end there is the materials of the actual piece, and we see their material transition from cement to the intermediary of plastic into clay. And then on this side, we see the active G-code files that would have been used to print those blocks that would have been cast. So in this way, I'm looking at trying to understand that balance between the G-code, the electronics, the design, the mechanization, and then me acting on these blocks. And that's all. This is a thing where I'm just trying to resolve those ideas. And really, it acts as a material index, seeing all these things in unison, in balance. And I feel that that works well off of the actual visual image-based piece from the visual index from the beginning with the tile blocks. And I was happy to begin and end the semesters in this way. And thank you.